So we are back at the reed desk, and today we're waking up this little reed. It's been a while since we've seen him, but we are going to check the crow and check the response in the instrument and refine the tip a little bit today, and then our goal is to put some back in. So let's see where we are. So that's not a bad crow. It's a little bit low. It's a B, but the response is pretty good, and there's almost a little bit of low in there already, and we haven't even put our back in. So to test my crow, the initial air is pretty soft or slow because I want to see how easy or hard it is to actually get the front of the reed to respond. And once I get a sense of the response, I put a little more air in to see how the rest of the reed is responding, to see if the air is getting through beyond the tip. So it's pretty good. And just so I can associate what the crow feels and sounds like as to what it's going to sound like and feel like in the instrument, I like to play it. So even though it's not finished and it's still long and we haven't even put back in yet, the upper register pitch is holding pretty well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just kind of assess my tip structure with backlight so I can see what areas need attention. And then I'm going to go ahead and remark my armpits at 66. It's never a bad idea to just put those markers in over and over again as soon as the pencil line goes away. Otherwise, you'll have floating armpits. Sometimes you might have a reed with finished armpits at 68, which is a little bit high, or sometimes 64, which is a little bit low. So the more things you can keep consistent in your reed making, I highly recommend that you do that. So I've got my armpits marked in, and I'm really just going to do a little bit of scraping right in the armpit. So I'm not looking to take anything from the middle of the tip or the spine, just a little bit right at the outside of the tip in the armpit, and then I'm going to follow through just the sides of the tip. So as I thin the sides of the tip, that's going to help control the aperture. So as the tip thins, my pitch won't tank too badly. I don't want the pitch to really get too low below my B, but I do want to get some cane off the tip so I can clip it because the tip is definitely too long. And then now I'm just going to come to the very outer tip and get rid of that ka-chunk. You hear that sort of thunk on the plaque as my knife hits the plaque. That's because the very outer tip is just a little thick. So I'm going to come to the other side. So it seems a little thicker right on this quadrant, so I'm going to get a little more cane out here. Again, really just the armpits. I'm going to follow through and then kind of take care of that outer corner a little bit, and then come over to the left side. So I'm really just scraping that outer side of the tip. I don't want to do anything in the middle, with the exception of just right out here, this last ½ millimeter or so of my outer tip. And then I always kind of come back and look at the profile, and I like how it's looking. It's not duckbilling or doing anything weird, and it looks reasonable as far as how open the aperture is from this vantage point. And then when I look at the aperture itself, starting to get some of the diamond shape we're looking for. So the diamond shape comes from having good spine through the reed that continues in the tip and having the sides of the tip thinner. So our crow did get just a little bit lower. So I'm going to go ahead and clip it 1 or 2 times just to see if we can get it up a bit and see where our function is before we measure our back and start to scrape in our back. So let's just take a few scrapes, a few clips here. Better already. So remember, only take teeny tiny little clips, because you can always clip more off, but you can't put the cane back on. coming up a little bit with each clip. I do want to see if we can get it a little bit closer to our C. Getting there. Alright, I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to try it in the oboe just to see what it feels like there. Okay, I lied. I'm going to do one more. So it's undecided. It's higher than the B we started with, but not quite our C just yet. So it's a little bit more resistant than it was because I just clipped it a whole bunch of times. But the sound has brightened up a little bit, so it's not quite as sort of soft and mushy sounding, and part of that is because we finished the tip a little bit more and we tried to get our pitch a little closer to a C. So I'm just going to quickly touch up my knife. And I'm going to come back to my tip for just another minute or two, and then I promise we will get some back in this reed. So I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to do our armpits and sides of tip. And then I'm going to check on my ka-chunk. I know there's going to be a ka-chunk because I just clipped it. Just smoothing out some peaks and valleys here that I see. Trying to keep the scraping as smooth as I can. Just let me check the ka-chunk over here. Right, then one more. Double check. So again, I'm going to give it another little clip or two to encourage it to come up to C. And you notice how many times I'm looking at the shape of the aperture and the profile. So I just want to make sure that everything that I'm doing is encouraging the size of the aperture that I want as well as the shape of the aperture that I want. That's better. It's a little bit closer. All right, I think we are ready for some back. So, put in my markings here. So I typically don't mark the bottom of my back because the windows are already kind of in place from our long scrapes. But if I had to count 1, 2, 3, it's going to be 3 or 4 millimeters from the thread that you'll have that shiny bark. And then I make like a little V. Can you see that? Or do you want me to come over?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. So the top of my V here is about 61 and the little peak of the V is about 60, so it's not a huge difference, but my teacher used to do that, and it kind of mirrors the peak that we have in the tip, and for whatever reason I like the idea, so I've always done that. I'm just going to mark on both sides. And then I'm going to take, you notice in my tip work I was using this knife, which gets nice and sharp, but it's really, really light. So to scrape in my back, I'm actually going to pick up this knife, which is, again, really sharp, but it's a little bit heavier than this one. And it gives me a little more control to take long scrapes. So I'm going to do one scrape in each quadrant. So I've got the knife right at the bottom of the back, and I'm actually going to scrape until I hit my line, and then I just very lightly draw the knife across the cane, and that just makes a tiny little catch. So when my pencil marks go away, if I'm scraping lightly, I can feel where that catches, so I know where the top of the back is without pushing and sort of making a giant cliff coming from the heart into the back. So I'm going to do a few of those in each quadrant. You don't want to go you want to do enough on the back, but you don't want to go too far because that can really tank your pitch and create instability. So when you're finishing reeds, you really want the reed to be in a pretty good state before you even go to the back. The back is not a magic fix. So you need to make sure that the reed is responsive and stable, up to pitch, all those good things before coming to the back. I'm just smoothing out any little catches or lumps and bumps along the way. And just kind of looking again at the profile. I like the way my aperture is looking. So our pitch is pretty good. We're in the neighborhood of a C. I would like to get a little more low in the reed. So I'm going to take a look here. Backlight and see where the reed needs some attention. So I'm looking for asymmetries. So I can see on this side that the right side of my peak is a little bit higher and a little different than the left side. So I'm going to do a little bit in there. This side is better, but actually I see a little bit of thickness on the left side there. So I'm going to just touch up a couple of these spots before I do anything more in the back or in the rest of the reed. I'm looking to just get the vibrations moving a little bit better. I don't really want to drop my pitch, but I do want the reed to vibrate a little bit better. I'm fixing the right side over here. And then was the left up here. That was just a little bit thicker. When you're fixing asymmetries, just go lightly, do a little bit and check the reed. And if it's responding positively, then you can do a little bit more, but it's really easy to go too far. I have a little trench over here. I'm going to see if I can fix that. So when you get little trenches, little thin areas, you need to scrape in back and in front, but not on the actual trench itself, to try to even that out. And I think we're going to need to clip, but let's just throw it in the oboe. Yeah, so I'm going to give it another clip or two. But I like the direction it's going. It is still fairly stable in the upper register, and the response is pretty good. I'd still like to get those vibrations moving, but this piece of cane actually feels really, really soft to me, so I just want to be careful not to do too much. And a piece of cane that has a tendency to be a little bit soft, it's good to do small amounts and let the reed actually dry out. Pretty close. I'll do one more. Okay. All right, so this is a good place to let it rest. So the response is decent, the pitch is good, I've got a little bit of low, and if it were cane that felt a little bit harder, I might scrape a little bit more on it, but because this piece of cane feels just a little bit soft and mushy, I'm going to let it dry out and maybe come back to it later today or tomorrow and see what little finishing touches it might need. But a piece of cane that's soft, it's better to just let it chill out and dry out. Otherwise, it's really easy to do too much. So you can kind of see what's going on here. When I come back to it tomorrow, I'm going to fix my little bit of scoliosis of the spine that I'm seeing on this side too. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to straighten my spine and fix some asymmetries, and that should be enough to really finish the reed. And then you play on it a little bit, and then the reed will tell you if it needs better response or more vibration. But this is a good place to let it rest. So we're going to put him in the case and let him take a nap.